Hey, this is Tiger. Welcome to my stream on this rainy Easter Sunday 2023. Before we start, read the disclaimer, please. We're talking here about playing a computer game, not doing things in the real world, even if we strive to understand the concepts as thoroughly as possible so that we can enjoy them even better. From the safety of our homes. Hello AJ, thank you for moderating my stream. Hey ZD Radar, nice to see you. What is the guy saying? Bitte seien Sie achtsam zwischen Bahnsteig und U-Bahn-Tür ist ein Spalt. Yes, that is a very long... It's raining in Prague too. Well, it is not raining actually, but it is generally a bit rainy here. And the dogs felt it when we have been out just recently. And yeah, that is a very long sentence for warning people not to fall into the gap between the train and the platform in subway trains. So it's a German long version of mind the gap, mind the gap. Yeah. How do you say that in Czech, by the way? Is it longer than in German even, or is it as short as you would see that in the UK, for example? Well, well, that is what he said in the chat. Well, today we are going to do one more stream and video about the Niddertalbahn. So it's the Niddertalbahn, and I can already turn on the service marker if I hit the correct button. We are doing one service running from Bad Vilbel to Stockheim. Is it Stockheim or is it Stockhausen? We will just see. No, it is Stockheim. Stockhausen is the composer right now. We're not doing chromatic music today. We are doing level crossing signals, especially. Though, let's jump in our service. Which one did I pick? The 1348. Here, Bad Vilbel to Stockheim. And we will have a look at the signs that protect level crossings. Have, I think, 3 presentations that we will cut in during the run. By the way, why are we getting a black screen here? Are we not getting any... Oh. There is... Mind the gap would be pozor na mezeru. But the long one would be... Prosim dávejte pozor mezi nás tupištěm a dveřmi metra je mezera. Alright. So it is quite long in Czech as well. I don't know if you recognized that as Czech when I pronounced it. I apologize for not being able to do this properly. Thank you very much. Now we know that. Mind the gap. Thank you, he says. Very good. Maybe I should focus on driving the train. Learning Czech will be a different video. We are here in our 628. Driving it from the cab car. You can see it, the 928. That means the engine is on the other end. By the way, why do we have 2 of those switches? One of them only works Gruppe 1, Gruppe 2, so that would be 2 engines. This is because the first versions of this train actually used to have 2 engines, 1 in each car. And I think that this is just what was left behind of that time. But there is actually only 1 engine in this car. Train lights, we don't need them. Instrument lights, we need them. Headlights... A bit more instrument lights because we can't really see it, and we need our brakes cut in. We will release the brakes as soon as we are ready to depart. And then the thing, do you know the brake test now? Oh no, I did not look that up with the brake test. Actually, this brake test switch on. Let's see what happens if we do that. So I apply the brakes and actually we get pressure in the brake cylinder. I release them. So it actually works on the brake cylinders. I will have to play around with that a bit more. PZB and CIFA on the cab car, I still use the keyboard shorts to turn them on because it is a bit shaky to turn them on. In the train, we have seen last time where we can turn on CIFA and PZB in the model, but it only works reliably on the other end if you're driving actually from the power car, not from the cab car end. So when you're driving from the cab car end, I would strongly recommend using the keyboard shorts, shift, control, and then enter. So we have our PZB lights flashing alternatingly 70-85, meaning we are in the starting program, treating us as a restricted 1000 Hz monitoring that is releasable. We have seen an HP2 signal allowing us to go 40. We don't expect another monitoring, so we can actually break free from this monitoring by pressing the release key. As soon as we're out of this switch here, what happens fast with our short train, we can accelerate to 60. And then one thing on this route is you can't really apply the brakes in a way that you are only taking away a bit whistleboard. So what I always try to do is to be slow enough when I know that there will be a descent, that the acceleration that the train gets from the descent is just enough to get us back to line speed when we are through the descent. That is maybe a bit slow now. So you see, first level crossing here, and we had two whistleboards in front of it. One in a distance that equals our braking distance, and one in a distance. The magnetic brake switch is functional. I don't know, I did not try this Nippur 44. We can maybe try this later. I also did not look up if the magnetic brake, the magnetic track brake, is only supposed to work in an emergency brake application scenario. What I assume. Maybe we can do an emergency brake application later and see if the magnetic track brake actually does anything. Yeah, we will do that. But first, let's go a bit in the stream. We are approaching Gronau now, and in front of Gronau there are two level crossings. And the second one is that special level crossing with this secretive speed reduction boards that we have talked about on the last video. I have talked about this with my friend Open Minded a bit, and I found actually an explanation for those signs in the official manual to this route. And what they say in the manual about it leads me to the assumption that it is just like CD Radar said last time, that they just put out what they had in storage, because I think this is just a fictional signage what they put there. You can never be sure what actually happened there in the 90s on the secondary track. This is the first rhomboid board, diamond board, that announces this signal here, and BU1 now, since the white lamp is flashing. We don't need to acknowledge yet. But it does not hurt acknowledging it anyway. And now we're getting this weird signage. First a whistleboard, and then the announcement 3 on yellow on white on black. And then the first level crossing was the one that we approached with the BU1. The whistleboard is for the next one, and here is this weird 3 on white on black. And the white A on yellow, and then the E on white. So where actually is the limit there? I was at 30, approximately at the middle of the level crossing. So a bit behind the sign. Obviously I should have stopped a bit earlier, but this does not matter. This is not what the stream is about. Let's look at this. I just dive through it, but you can see that it is really only a very short span of track where this 30 reduction applies to. And I prepared a second presentation for that, to look at those speed boards again, because it is really interesting. Presentation, please. Yes, presentation is on. There are 4 possibilities to reduce the speed to 30 in front of a level crossing that I have found. Probably there are more, but there are at least 4 of them in the rules, and they are all different. So this is my representation of a level crossing. We have a track, we have a train, and we have a road crossing. So this is what is supposed to be a level crossing here. What you can do, and this is obviously the most common one, you use actually an LF6 sign, 3 for 30 on yellow on white with a black border. Those are the signs that you see all around the German routes, and you know that they announce an incoming speed limit, and then it is followed by a LF7, the 3 in black on a white board. That is nothing new. Yeah, it happens all the time. When they don't have signs for some speed, they just write it with mark on empty white board. Well, not so bad, and at least this ends up on a LF7 sign then. If you use a black marker at least and put it on a white board, then you have an LF7 sign. And then you need a second LF7 sign at the end. And then you have a speed reduction that starts at the first LF7. The LF6 is only an announcement and ends at the next LF7 as soon as your last vehicle in the train has passed this LF7 sign. And Open-Minded found actually some cab view videos on the internet, and they show that on this particular level crossing nowadays saying 2020, 2021, we actually have a sequence of those signs. LF6 for 30, then LF7 for 30, and then, because nowadays you can go 80, not just 60 like we can do it on the DLC, 2 LF7 signs in succession, one in front of the level crossing and one after. So this is the actual signage that we saw in those videos from 2020. Obviously we're playing this DLC in 1992, so we don't know what signage was there, because 1992 no loco driver had a mobile phone or a dash cam or a GoPro or whatever to put up on his dash board to provide us with those cab ride views. So we don't know what actually was there. I tried to message Mike Goltz on the forum, the TSG guy, and asked whether they can tell us what sources they had for that, but I did not get an answer yet. We'll see. I'll keep you updated if I get a reply to that. So apart from that, what can we do? If it was only a temporary speed restriction, not a permanent one, but only a temporary one, we could use this sign. This looks almost like the LF6, but without the black border. It is only a black numeral on yellow triangle with a white border. This is an LF1 sign, and if you look up in the rules, an LF1 sign always comes with those lights, 2 yellow lights, and unlike the VR zero distance signal that we have talked about already, that announces a red signal, on the next main signals they don't climb from left to right, but they fall from left to right. So it's the other way around, the other direction. And yeah, you can read it in the rules, at least the current rules, that you must have those lights unless on secondary lines where you can't go faster than 50. We can go 60 on our lines, so on an LF7 sign we should have those lights, so that at night you see that there is a signal. In the game we don't have those lights. An LF1 is always succeeded by an LF2, or at least that is the idea of those rules, and this is the A on yellow with a white border though. In the game we have this black A on yellow without a white border. And then the succession after that is the E sign that we have seen in the game, a black E on a white board, LF3. So that will be the succession that the rules provide for a temporary speed restriction, not a permanent one. And then you have a limit that starts at the A board at the LF2, A for Anfang, begin in German, and E for Ende, what is YA but not yellow square 3. A yellow square 3 with a white border exists too, but this is a sign from Eastern Germany that combines the LF1 and LF2 orders. If you have enough way to see it from afar to adjust your speed to it. I did not want to talk about that, but since you mentioned it, it is in the rules. An LF1/2 sign would be 3 numeral. The idea is that when you pass the LF7 you have enough distance and time to slow down until it actually starts. It is this advance and then execution idea. So, and then again this limit is valid until the last vehicle has passed the E sign. This can, even if this distance between the A and the E board is rather short, more or less covering the level crossing, can be quite long because your whole train has to pass. Here it starts when the tip of your train hits the A board, and it only ends after the last vehicle has passed the E board. So if you have a long train, you are well condemned to keep that speed limit until the train has passed the E board for quite a long time, even if that distance is only short, like we have seen that in our game on the pause screen diagram. So that is the normal sequence. This is the one for temporary speed restrictions, and they are quite restrictive. Yeah, you can't use them just for permanent ones. Normally you can only use them for temporary speed restrictions for construction sites, protect them or whatever. On secondary lines there is a provision where the person in charge of the railroad running on those lines can allow them to be put up in different situations. We obviously do not know if that was the case at the time at this specific spot. The next way to do it is using the sign that we have seen, the black 3 on white with a black border. This is an LF4 sign according to DS301. What is DS301 now? We have in our signal rules some signals that are only valid for Western Germany and some that are only valid for Eastern Germany, because in the decades when Germany was divided, also the railway networks were divided, and they developed different signals, and obviously those signals are there and did not get replaced after the reunification. So we still have some signals that are only in the west and some that are only in the east. And for the LF4 and LF5 signs we have a version for the west that is DS301, and we have a version in the east that will be here, the fourth one on my diagram, that will be DV DS301. That is a bit confusing, but this is the way that the signaling directive talks about those signs. It would be permanently temporary or temporary but forever. Yeah, don't confuse us, CD Radar is already confusing enough. So this LF4, according to DS301, what does it say? It says there is an incoming speed reduction, for example, in front of a level crossing. And then you would get the LF5 sign according to DS301. That is the A on a whiteboard. And that tells us here we are getting the warning and here is the execution. But the rules provide that this LF5 sign can actually be left away. Then, okay, but how long does the speed limit work? It starts at the A board, obviously, and then the rules say, and this is something that I wasn't aware in the last video when we talked about it, but I found it in the rules now. And then you do not need a third sign that tells you that the speed limit ends, but at least when it is for slowing down for a level crossing, then you can resume the old speed limit, the speed limit that was applicable before, as soon as the first vehicle has reached the middle of the road. And then you can accelerate again, and then you are no longer stuck to the 30. That is obviously something, especially for long trains, that can speed up the process quite heavily, because not the whole train has to pass the resume sign, but as soon as the tip of the train has reached the middle of the road, you can accelerate again. What did you say? It is not flashing red. What is not flashing red though? I don't know. Anyway, so where does this come from here? Yeah, the last thing about this signs here in the rules, it is stated that the LF5 can actually be left away, and then the speed limit that is announced here actually starts at the level crossing. So it starts at the level crossing and it ends as soon as the first vehicle has reached the middle of the road. So it is really a short spot only. So more or less requires the train to slow down to 30, and then as soon as it has slowed down, entered the level crossing, it can accelerate again. So this only makes sure that the train can actually stop in front of the level crossing if the driver sees that there is a vehicle sitting on the level crossing. Why do we do that, especially for level crossings? I think the idea is, as soon as the train is on the level crossing, most motorists, except for the most obtuse, would not try to pass the level crossing anymore if the train is already there. And the motorists who still try to cross the level crossing at this point, they don't get deterred if the train is traveling actually faster. So keeping to the slow speed at this point when the train is actually occupying the level crossing does not help prevent accidents at this point. So it is okay if the train starts accelerating again here. I wanted to show you that in the rules so that you can read it up for yourself. This is an excerpt of the Directive 301. You can read it up here, 301 Module 0501. These are the Langsamfahrsignale, all the signals that are connected with speed limits. And we have the LF4 here in the version of DS301, and it says it follows a permanent speed reduction where you can't go faster than the speed that is indicated on the sign. And it is a triangle with a white triangle with a black border and a black numeral on it. Top of it. So that is actually what we have here. Here it says it is only on secondary lines, only on Nebenbahnen, and it is usually put up in the braking distance, the regular braking distance before the limit applies. In front of level crossings, it can also be in a distance that is enough to slow down. Does not need to be the regular braking distance. But that, in my opinion, prevents the LF4 sign to be put up on the same mast as the LF5 sign, because between the LF4 and the LF5 sign there is obviously not enough distance to slow down if they are put up on the same mast. And here it says the LF4 sign is put up where the speed must be reduced in front of level crossings. Bahnübergänge are level crossings in German. And then those two sentences are the interesting one. The speed reduction must be in effect, so you must be under the prescribed speed as soon as you pass the LF5 sign, or where there is no LF5 sign in front of the level crossing. So that says the LF5 sign, the one, does not necessarily need to be there. If it is not, then you have to slow down in front of the level crossing. And then you must keep under the speed until the first vehicle has reached approximately the middle of the road. And then you can accelerate again. So this is where I got this, what I just told you. Going back to our presentation. The fourth version of signals, I just wanted to tell you that we don't have them in the DLC, but just to make it complete, the LF4 and LF5 version according to the DB 301, that is in Eastern Germany. And unlike the LF4 and 5 in the Western Germany version, it can be on secondary lines and on main lines as well. It looks like this. For some reason, they don't leave away the 0 here. So they give you the full number without the 0 that is left away on the other signals. Apart from that, it is the same sign on a white triangle with a black border. And that is LF4 according to DB 301, the Eastern version of that. And then for the execution sign, you don't get the A sign, but you get this. It looks like someone has forgotten to put the picture of your grandmother in this portrait, but it is actually just this LF5 DB301. It is called an Eckentafel, a corner board, and it has the same meaning as the A. This is where the speed limit starts, and it is a bit different than here. The first vehicle has to pass or have passed the level crossing until it can accelerate again. So it's not the middle of the road, but it has to have passed the whole road, right? So that is a small difference between those two signs, but not a big one. What does a CD radar say? On Czech railways there is something similar to that, but it is a special sign on the LF3, and it has the LF3 has this special sign. Driver can speed up when front of the train passes this and not the end. I see. Well, we come to that because we have something similar. Remember, we can only use this LF4 and LF5 in the Western version on secondary lines. The idea that if the train has occupied the road, nobody in his right mind will try to pass the level crossing anymore can be used on main lines as well. And then we don't want the train to be condemned to keep to the slow speed until it has passed the last sign. If we want to achieve something similar for the temporary speed restrictions or the normal speed restrictions on our main lines, we can put an additional sign to the end sign, to the second LF7 or to the E sign for the LF3. It looks like this. BÜ, B umlaut for Bahnübergang, level crossing, and then the train is allowed to accelerate as soon as the first vehicle has reached the middle of the road. And the same thing works here as well. I have not seen that in the game so far, but it is in the rules. I can show you if you want. Per PDF. Back to my PDF. Let's go to the LF7. The LF7 is after the LF6. LF7 here. LF7. The black numeral on the rectangular white board. And here you can see it. Section 9. If there is this additional sign with the B umlaut, then you can accelerate as soon as the first vehicle has reached the middle of the level crossing. And the same provision you have on the LF3 as well. Here is the LF3 and here is the additional sign with the Bahnübergang. So that is that. Those are the 4 ways of putting up signs that are, in my opinion, according to the rules. The normal sequence that you can use everywhere, the temporary speed restriction sequence that you can only use for temporary speed restrictions. CD Radar says, yep, that is very similar. That is nice to hear. But here it is not BU, but pictogram of steam engine. That is nice. That is actually a much nicer sign than BU. A pictogram of a steam engine. Why don't we have a sign like this? The third version is the LF4, LF5 according to the Western rules, the S301. That only works on secondary lines, not on main lines. And then the Eastern Germany version, LF4, LF5, DV301, with the 0 not left away and this funny Eckenboard. I have never seen that in the game so far, and we cannot put them up in Western Germany, I guess. And I don't think we put up new signs of that kind. We use the BU additional signs for that. What does the game manual tell us about this situation here? This is the game manual that can be downloaded from the internet. It is page 30. It is a nice thing that they have a driver's manual for this DLC. It does not go without saying. And here I have found the description, obviously, of those signs that we just passed. The first one, the black numeral on yellow with the white border and the little black border, they actually think it is an LF6 sign, right? So it is not an LF1 sign, so obviously that's why it does not have lamps to accompany it, but it is an LF6 sign, and they say warning for a temporary speed restriction, and this is obviously not true. The LF6 sign warns about a permanent speed restriction. The LF1 sign warns about a temporary speed restriction. Reduce speed to posted number time tenths. That is obviously true. And then they say LF4 and LF5. That is true, that is an LF4 sign, but this is not an LF5 sign. The black A on the LF5 is on a white rectangular sign. This is on yellow without a white border, so this sign does not exist in this context. If it had a white border, it would be a LF2 sign. If it was on a white background, then it would be an LF5. Enforcement of previously announced speed restriction. Well, in this context, it does not work. The LF4 is the announcement in itself, and the A sign on white would be the enforcement or the marker for where it starts. But in this context, we have seen the LF3 sign and the A sign should be divided by the regular braking distance, or at least enough room for the driver to slow down. In this context, it is probably not allowed to put them up. At least not in combination with an LF2 sign, what is for temporary again. And then the LF3, that is true, that is an LF3 sign. This is the end of the temporary speed restriction. That is actually true. If that was a temporary speed restriction, then the LF3 sign would be correct. Yeah, but then we would have an LF1, LF2, LF3, but not a combination of LF6, LF4 and 5, what is not an LF5 anyway, and then an LF3. I don't know what sources they had. According to the rules that are currently valid, this doesn't work. And LF6 and temporary, this is obviously not true. And LF5 and yellow, neither. So much for that. And since they gave this description in the manual, I have the idea that they did probably not fully understand the system that is used for those signs here. Those 4 things should be valid sequences for those signs, and which of them to use. From the cap views that we've seen from 2020, this one is used on this at this particular level crossing now. If you want to use the LF4, then it would have been enough to only put the LF4 and then optionally with the LF5 or without it. The interesting thing actually is that in the game the speed restriction does not start before the level crossing, and I think that it actually ends as soon as I don't know. The train is so short that you can't really know when it ends. Anyway, let's drive a bit. What we can try and do is the thing with the magnetic track brake. Let's see if we can find the magnetic track brake. Here is no magnetic track brake. I think it is only on the powered one. Here is a magnetic track brake. You can see this part is the magnetic track brake. We turn it on. We accelerate to our speed of 60. And then I just try to perform an emergency brake application. This BU signal seemed to be not active, by the way. Okay, emergency. Well, at least it is not animated, the magnetic track brake. If it was simulated, I don't know if it was. But if it had been simulated, then you should have seen this shoe go down on the track. So this shoe should have attached itself on the track, and this thing would have been magnetized, and the magnetic force would have helped to press this shoe on the rail to slow down the train. Ronny, der TF, der Triebfahrzeugführer. Oh, that is good. Depends on if you were below 50 when going into emergency. You're saying that it does not activate, or is not supposed to activate when we're going slower than 50? Is that so? That would be actually interesting to try that out. I thought we were faster than 50 when we applied the emergency brake application, but it is possibly that applying the brakes slowed us down until I actually got to the emergency setting. Yes, but to my knowledge it's not modeled in any way. Yeah, probably not. But we can actually try it again. Let's just, we have 1 kilometer until we get to Niederdorfelden. So just, well, now I can't because we're getting the 1000 Hertz from this isolated NE2 sign. Let's do it on the next lap. BU1. Don't need to acknowledge. Signal showing HP 1, meaning we don't need to slow down to 40. But we need to stop at Niederdorfelden. So are you actually a Triebfahrzeugführer, a train driver, Ronnie? Doors. DB Fernverkehr, that is super cool. Nice to have you on the stream. So did you ever drive a Baureihe 628? It's not the typical vehicle that you would drive at DB Fernverkehr nowadays, I guess. Oh, I accelerated too early, I guess, before I had the brakes in the pressure out. What did I do? Something. Now it should work. Okay. Before we get to Oberdorfelden, we try it again. Magnetic track brake switch is on. Driven licensed on 420, 423 as I used to work for the S-Bahn München and now a few ICE trains. Ah, great. I need to release, otherwise the PCB would stop us as soon as we're going past the 45. Because we passed the isolated NE2 sign. Now we try it again. Now I will accelerate way beyond the 60 so that we are safe. Again. Emergency application. That shoe is not moving. So I guess it is not modeled. Anyway. But the braking force is pretty solid, yeah. It is not a heavy train, is it? By the way, what I've realized is that the weight, the mass of your train actually varies in this DLC. Probably simulating passenger weight. So driving the same service does not always give you the same mass for your train. But there seems to be some kind of a random element. And it seems to change when you're going. Or fuel. Yes, fuel I have seen too. But fuel would not explain an increase in weight or mass. But on some freight trains, I think I've seen that it varies with the fuel, or because of the fuel consumption. So, on the next lap, we should focus a bit on the level crossing signals, because that was what we were actually supposed to talk about today. not about the magnetic track brake. There are more or less two types of level crossings here in this DLC. One level crossing is the one that only has this level crossing sign, the St. Andrews cross, white with red ends. And the other type is one that is with technical safety measures, with especially the red lights that are flashing. And this diamond board or rhomboid board here, Rautentafel, announces that there will be a signal that shows you if the technical measures are actually up. If the white light on this signal is flashing, you know the lights are up. The red lights that are warning the road traffic are up. The level crossing can have crossing gates, but it does not necessarily need to have crossing gates. Here is the repeater for this signal, I guess. Yes, it's the repeater. And the red lights are up. The whistle boards are for the first type of level crossing. The one that does not have the flashing red lights, but only the St. Andrews sign. And if it is a public road crossing, you get two of the whistle boards. If it's just a pedestrian crossing or a non-public road crossing, like the next one, you can only get one whistle board. So AJ, what do you say? I actually have two real-life train drivers watching on my stream. Does it make you nervous? That is really cool, yeah. So I hope I am not talking too much nonsense with the stuff that I'm explaining. Let's put it to a test. Here is the presentation for the level crossing stuff. Honestly, just like to lurk occasionally and see what kind of crap people come up with. Yeah, you're good. You're all good, thank you. Well, feel free to point out the crap that I come up with in my stuff. I try to research it as thoroughly as possible. Well, what I do, I come from the regulations and from the rules, what I can read in it, what should be. I have no idea how it is really in real life. And a bit of a reality check should be great. Level crossing again. Those two markers first. You have seen those yellow signs and those white signs with, again, a B umlaut and a number, and those are level crossing announcement boards, BU Ankündetafeln, and level crossing marker boards, BU Kennzeichentafeln. Now, obviously, but your knowledge up to now is somewhat remarkable. Thank you very much for that. I enjoy that very much. So, those boards, the yellow ones, get shown to you that you are aware that there is a level crossing incoming. Again, the BU is for Bahnübergang, level crossing in German, and the number tells you at what kilometer on the track the level crossing will be. And the white board is in front of the level crossing, and it shows you here is the level crossing that was announced at this kilometer on the track. So obviously those things can overlap. Sometimes you get a yellow one and a white one on top of each other. There are possibilities where you can get numerals shown with it, so that you know that there are actually a couple of level crossings within a quite short time or length of track. And those can happen even on main lines. You can see them on the Dresden DLC, I think, even if there are level crossings where you don't need to do anything in the DLC. At least you can see those signs that you get warned there is a level crossing, and at this point there is actually the level crossing. So those two signs, you might have seen them on other DLCs as well. We have them here in this DLC too. And they come with level crossings regardless whether there is only the St. Andrew's cross, or if there are the technical measures in form of the red flashing lights, or if there are crossing gates, if they are locally controlled, or like the modern ones on the modern lines, they are controlled by, well, some guy sitting far away in the signaling box, so that as a train driver you don't necessarily need to pay attention for the technical measures to secure the level crossings. The ones that only have the St. Andrew's cross without technical measures to secure them, those are obviously the lowest grade level crossings. They have those whistle boards. P for Pfeiftafel. Pfeifen is whistling in German. That's why it's called a Pfeiftafel, a whistle board. This is just a word-by-word translation, and typically you have two of them. Yeah, they can come in this variation as well, a white P on a black board with somewhat white border. They are actually, according to the rules, the same signals. And they are usually put up in the regular braking distance. Regular braking distance on main lines, we have had this a couple of times. 1,000 meters, 1 kilometer on main lines. On secondary lines it can be shorter than 1,000 kilometers, and this needs to be specified. What does CD Radar says? That's true. Also noticed what was being said wrong in public when I became a train driver. Yes, I don't want to add to all this crap that is said in public about things, and I'm always open for getting corrected on things. So if you have anything to say about my videos, about my stream, please don't hesitate and feel free to point it out for me. There is exceptions for this. Near Frankfurt Main Line, there is one that's quite special. A whistle board or what? Or for the braking distance? Well, it says in the rules it is usually put out in the regular braking distance. Obviously, if the track in question requires it, you can put it in a different spot. And then typically you have a second one for public road crossings. If it is only a pedestrian crossing, or it is a crossing for whatever, some industrial compound where there is no public road traffic, then the second one can be left away. Then you only have one whistle board. And this you can see in this DLC as well. There are sometimes very small level crossings where people might just walk over the tracks, across the tracks as pedestrians. Then you only have one whistle board. Yeah, a whistle board as well as the braking distance, but what you said is totally fine. Thank you. One special situation. We talked about this in the last stream. You're approaching a level crossing, you get a whistle board, but then you are supposed to stop at the platform before you actually get to the level crossing. So whistling at this point does not make a lot of sense, because if you are a motorist approaching the level crossing, you hear the train whistling, and then you stop, and then there is no train because the train stopped at the platform, or people are alighting and getting on the train, and you think, how did I not hear a train? And then after a while you start crossing, and then the train comes. Yeah. What do we do in this situation? There is a special sign in the rules that looks like this: two black stripes left and right on this additional sign. And they tell you that you only have to whistle at this point if you don't stop at the next stopping point before you reach the level crossing. So if you're a train that does not stop, that is running through, then you have to whistle at this sign. If you have to stop anyway, then you don't need to whistle at this point. And then there will be a second whistle board after the stopping point where you can whistle when you start driving after having stopped at the station. CD Radar, what did you say? Isn't the braking distance unnecessary if there is a curve between the sign and the level crossing? The driver can't see the crossing anyway and won't brake in time. Yeah, but I think the whistling is anyway to warn the motorists more or less, and then the braking distance is used as some reasonable distance for when does a motorist need the warning so that he can adjust to the train approaching. Because if the whistling is too early, then the motorist will wait for minutes, no train is coming, and then he thinks, okay, then I will cross, and then the train is there all of a sudden. But you're right, this braking distance requirement here can obviously not be for the train to be able to stop here at this point. Yeah, those are those level crossings with just the St. Andrews cross, without red flashing lights, without any technical safety measures for the level crossing. This is where you get the whistle boards with the P, and then you can happily whistle away with your train. What in general you don't do a lot in Germany, whistling. On the American DLCs, you're always whistling a lot when you're entering a station, when you're exiting a station, and more or less on every occasion the train whistles when they are entering a tunnel, when they're getting out of a tunnel. In Germany, there is not a lot of whistling, as much as I can see. Only on those secondary lines, we have a lot of those whistle boards. On the main lines, to be fair, they try to avoid level crossings anyway, where they can. Sure, it makes sense if the line speed is higher, so the distance will be longer, and therefore the train will honk sooner. Yeah, that's what I meant. So it makes sense to link it to the regular braking distance on this line. Let's have a look on the level crossings that are technically secured, especially with those red flashing lights on those boards. This is when the rules talk about technically secured level crossings. They can have crossing gates. They can have crossing gates that only cover one side of the road, but they do not necessarily need to have one. The signals that you can get here work for both. The deciding thing is that they have those red flashing lights. That counts as the technical safety measure that is switched on or switched off. So the first thing that you will see of a level crossing of that kind is the rhomboid board or diamond board, the Rautentafel BU2. This tells you there is a level crossing of that kind incoming. Be prepared to see a BU 0 or 1 signal, and that looks like this quite complex signal. There are a different version of the signal. Sometimes this yellow border can be left away, sometimes even the yellow disc here, this is not a lamp, this is a disc, can be left away. Sometimes you can have 2 yellow lamps instead of the yellow disc, but this here is the default signal that should be used in most of the time, in most of the occasions, and it should have a mast sign, or the mast should be striped black and white. And in this form, without a white light, it is a BU0. If it is not flashing, it is called an Überwachungssignal, a supervision signal. And if it is flashing on top, then it is a BU1 supervision signal. And if it is flashing, it tells you the technical safety measures on the level crossing are put on and they are working. So you are safe to cross the level crossing. Typically, when the train passes this rhomboid board, those red lights should be switched on, and at the same time this signal here should show the BU1 aspect, so that the driver is assured that he can pass the level crossing, and the cars will be warned with this red lights, or the crossing gates are down if there are any. If you have watched the West Somerset Railway video, when you're leaving Minehead in the West Somerset Railway, West Somerset Railroad video, you are crossing a level crossing where you have a quite similar aspect, a flashing white light, and it has the same indication there. As soon as the white light is flashing, the level crossing is secured. You are safe to pass it. If it is not flashing, it is out. Then you have to stop in front of the level crossing, activate the technical measures yourself, and then you can go get back into your train and pass the level crossing. And at the same time, this signal here should have an 1000 Hertz magnet, a PZB magnet, and you will have to hit your Wachsamkeitstaste, your vigilance key, and then you get 1000 Hertz monitoring. The PCB computer will not know what the 1000 Hertz magnet belongs to, whether it is just a regular speed limit that is incoming, or whether you pass the VR0 signal, so that you're approaching a red light. At this point, the PCB computer will just initiate the typical sequence for 1000 Hertz monitorings. It depends whether in what PCB mode you are in, O, M, or U, and you have to adjust to that. Slow down to 80 if you are in PZB O mode, and then at some time, yeah, follow the brake curve and slow down even more, or slow down to the 85, because typically you won't get the 500 Hertz anymore, but then you have to stop in front of the level crossing. And it is supposed that in this DLC that this can happen with a chance of 1% when you are passing those signals. I have never had the fun that it actually happened to me. I'm still waiting for it to happen the first time, but it is a great thing that they introduced this this random element in the game, that it can happen that this white light is not flashing, then it is a BU0 signal, then the 1000 Hertz magnet here should be on, and you have to hit your vigilance key and you get the 1000 Hertz monitoring, and then you know, oh, I have to stop in front of the level crossing, and then you will find a box somewhere where you can activate the red lights or the crossing gates if they are there yourself, and then you can resume with your service. So that is a great thing to introduce random elements here. Typically, and you see that in the DLC a lot, you get a second signal of that type just in front of the level crossing or a bit before, and it will be a repeater. So it is not a new level crossing that is incoming here, and so that you know that it is just a repeater and not a new level crossing that is announced, it will have this sign here, the white disc on a black ground, and you know it from the video about the HL signals in Eastern Germany that they use a white circle or a black circle if you're only speaking about the outline on distant signal repeaters, and in their special kind of the NE2, the Vorsignaltafel, if the signal is closer than 95% of the regular braking distance. So this circle thingy returns here again to mark this signal as a repeater and not a new one. Yeah, or if you're... So what does the chat say? The fact that 95% of players don't even know what to press and how to act in normal occasions sadly makes this kinda obsolete, lol. Well, I'm very happy that they actually introduced it for those players who want to know more about that and try to get into it. And I can only encourage it and praise them for doing this and celebrate that. This is the way this game is supposed to go. But you're right, most of the players don't know how to operate the PZB stuff. But maybe with the videos that I'm doing here, I can get 2 or 3 more players to understand that and enjoy it. The PZB stuff is, if you compare it with other systems, a ridiculously complicated system, to be fair, right? But it is really fun to use. For people like you, it's great addition, obviously. And ZD Raider says, I became interested in PCB LZB because of this game. Yeah, so it worked for me. I did not know anything about trains and PCB and railway signals before I got this game free on the Epic Game Store like 2.5 years ago. And I really got drawn into it, and it makes so much more fun, or is so much more fun if you actually try to understand what is happening there. And they put in a lot of effort to get it right. Obviously, there are some things that don't work, there are glitches, but all in all, there is a lot of stuff that you can find in the game as soon as you start looking for it, and not just use it like Super Mario trains and press the key for drive and the key for brake and use the HUD in between. But back to our signals. What else did I want to tell you? That this is a supervision signal repeater with the white disc, and also here typically the first one of those signals is set up in the usually braking distance between the signal and the level crossing. Here, CD radar, it obviously makes sense because here the train actually needs to slow down to a stop if the signal is showing the BU0 aspect. Ronnie, what are you saying? What irritates me a lot is that it never seems to get fixed to some extent. Well, they do a lot, but there is also stuff that's broken since several years. Yeah, not gonna lie, that is true. And sometimes I think that the priorities are on the wrong things, but obviously they have to pay their staff and have to sell their game and have to find a way to balance it out. And it's a very satisfying feeling when I'm playing and I see the signal and I know exactly what to do and I don't even have to think about it. Yeah, totally, I agree, CD Radar. That is satisfying if you actually start to understand what is happening there. And it is a funny thing when you're riding on a train in real life and looking out of the window and see stuff and think, that is that, and now I understand what is meant by this. Or you're waiting on a platform in a station and you see a locomotive or a train, and all of a sudden you understand the Bremsanschrift, the writing from what is on the cars. So you learn a lot by playing computer games. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? And to be fair, I have much more understanding for the staff with the Deutsche Bahn if the trains are late or not coming at all or stuff, because you know what an insanely difficult operation it is to run all these trains on time, and as soon as anything breaks or anything is missing, everything gets confused and stuff, and it needs to be safe. So I have much more respect for what the people that are working for the Deutsche Bahn are doing, and don't complain about trains being late or missed connections and stuff. I don't know if you're into flight sims, but a train on a steady level like a Phoenix 8, for example, now that would be one hell of a satisfaction. Okay, we can't go into flight sims. Good. Yeah, the distance between the rhomboid board and the first signal of that kind is, according to the rules, typically double the speed limit. So if there's a speed limit of 70, there should be 140 meters in between them. If the first signal of that kind is closer to the level crossing, then the regular braking distance, again the 5% under the regular braking distance, making, or put it the other way around, 95% and closer, then you get this white triangle on the mast for this signal. telling you that you don't have your regular braking distance until you get to the level crossing, so you have to brake a bit harder than usual. And that is that. We have seen that on this white thingy on the NE3 signs, I think they are. Or I forgot the number. The distance signal announcement boards. The first one has this white triangle if the distance signal is closer than 95% of the regular braking distance to the next main signal. And we have seen this on the semaphore signals on the NE2, the distance signal board, if that signal is closer than 95% of the regular braking distance. So we know that sign, and we can see that on this kind of signal as well. But let's put it back. What you also can encounter, but not in this DLC, are those variations of the rhomboid boards with a decreasing number of diamonds. They just announcing that this signal is incoming, and just like the distance signal announcement boards, they should be put up in a distance of 100 meters between the last one and the signals, and then with 75 meters in between. And now you can see why we don't have those in our DLC, because a speed limit of 60 would result in a distance of 120 meters between the rhomboid board and the first signal of that kind, and you can't fit a lot of them in 140 meters, so they are just missing here. So to put them up, you can see that would be 250 meters. To have 250 meters in between here, you would have a speed limit of 130, then you have 260 meters here, 10 meters to the first one. So you need quite a high speed limit for those boards to make any sense. Was that what I wanted to say about those signals? Let's see. I think that's it, yeah. I got a bit distracted chatting to the two real life train drivers in the chat, but that is just fine. Let's see what we can do here. My camera got shot around. Due to our emergency brake experiments, we are far behind schedule anyway. Now we're getting to Büdesheim. For Büdesheim, I wanted to talk about Gruppenausfahrsignale and have a third presentation for that stuff as well. But just let's drive a bit, and before we actually enter Büdesheim, I will switch in this presentation. Open-minded pointed this out to me. I actually did not realize. But he's right. We should actually talk about that. What does Ronnie say? Might as well become a train driver with your interest, lol. Well, if you have a shortage, just ask me. Maybe I can fit that in my tight schedule. Two whistleboards. There will be one public road traffic level crossing with St. Andrews boards only, and here it was. Isolated distance signal board. Acknowledge it with vigilance key, 1000 Hz monitoring. Have to slow down to 85, what is obviously not a problem since we are not allowed to go faster than 60. And now we can see that the signal is showing HP2. We have to slow down to 40 until we pass the signal. And then we're entering Büdesheim. And before we get into Büdesheim, third presentation. So with our experiments about the magnetic track brake, everything got a bit tense. But, well, what are Gruppenausfahrsignale? Group exit signals. For this, I tried to draw a situation that is quite common. You have a line. On this line, you have a small station that has one passing track, so that trains can come from different directions and they can pass each other. So for that, you obviously need two tracks, two switches, a second track. There is a platform, for example. Here is a platform, and then you have two trains. Let's say for whatever reason there are two trains that are coming from the left going to the right. So this one is the locomotive. Those are those are the cars, and they occupied track 1 and track 2. And then you only have one signal past the second switch, only one exit signal for both tracks. And this is called a Gruppenausfahrsignal, a group exit signal. You don't have them a lot on main lines. I don't know if there actually are any left. But in this DLC you have a couple of them, and they are still allowed according to the rules. As long as the signal is showing HP 0, it is not a problem, because it orders both trains to not go. What is going on in the chat here? We always do, but you'll have to run through the whole application. Yeah, obviously I would have to do that. How long do new driver candidates learn before they can drive themselves? Yeah, well, we will go to the chat back after my discussion of the group exit signals to not distract that for you. So, what was I in the process of saying? As long as the exit signal shows HP 0, it is not a problem, because it orders both trains not to go but stay in the place. The problem arises as soon as this signal switches to a more favorable aspect, let's say an HP 1. And obviously the question is which of those trains is allowed to go. If they both go, they will run into each other at this switch. So how do we know which train is allowed to go if the group exit signal switches to clear? We have seen that if you happen to have watched our video about the Arosa linie, there are group exit signals as well, color light signals, and they have additional position light signals underneath for each track. So if those position lights are in a horizontal position, the track can't go, and if one of them switches to a vertical line, then the corresponding track is free to go. We have seen that on the Arosa line, but we don't have that here. We only have this signal for the exit. Let's have a look at what helps us with that a bit, at least. First of all, there are those signs, the NE5 Haltetafel, the stop marker. This is where the trains are supposed to stop. This does not say, this does not tell us which train can go as soon as the group exit signal switches to clear, but at least it helps keeping the train away from the switch, so that the train that is actually allowed to go can go without running into the other train, so that one train does not foul the switch for the other train. So this is why we have those stop markers to organize where the trains are supposed to wait. Sometimes we actually have a situation where this board is not at the platform but a long way behind. This only makes sense if you are a freight train, for example. Then you have to stop at the stop marker. If you are a passenger train, then you just ignore the stop marker and have to stop at the platform, obviously, for your passengers to board and get off the train. This does not tell us which train is supposed to go, but it organizes the trains a bit. Those Haltetafel, just like the whistle board, can be in the inverted version as well, a white H on a black board. We have them in the game, in the DLCs here. They are actually the same sign. They mean the same. Another thing that organizes the trains and makes sure that the switches are not fouled is this little marker. And they are a lot in the DLC here. They are little knobs or buttons that are actually fixed to the ground, and they are painted in a way that they are alternatingly red and white, and they indicate how far the train can go up to the switch and wait without fouling the switch. They are RA12 markers, limit of foul I called them. I don't know if there is a better English word for it, Grenzzeichen. And again, if you compare it with the Arosa-Linie, for the group exit signals, you have those white and red checkered boards that have the same indication that organize the trains and tell you how far you can go without fouling the switch and where you have to wait if the group exit signal orders you to wait. But again, this just organizes the trains and makes sure that the train that can go does not foul the switch for the other train. It does not tell us which train can go. So what actually can tell us that? Let's take that back again. If you read the directive 438, the Fahrdienstrichtlinie, Fahrdienstvorschrift, it tells you at a certain point on secondary lines, the Eisenbahn Betriebsleiter has to order how it is resolved and told to the drivers which train can go in a situation like this. And obviously we do not know what the Eisenbahn Betriebsleiter, again I do not know what the English word for that should be. It might be the person in charge of the railway operations on these lines. So the head honcho who organizes all the railway operations on these lines. He has to make sure how it is communicated which one of those trains can go. You have a reference that sometimes the dispatcher only delivers this signal to one train, and the train that actually gets this signal is the one that is allowed to go. That is usually the signal ZP9, Abfahrauftrag, the order of departure, that can be given by a person that is running on the train. That was in former times a lot, but now that most of the trains are only staffed by the driver alone, you don't have a guy who can hold up a paddle showing this, or at night green lamp ordering the train, you are clear to go, leave the station. At some stations you have indicators of that kind showing a green circle with different bubbles. That is the same signal here. It is the order to leave the platform, to start. And on older signals, especially in Eastern Germany, together with HL signals, you can find this signal. Means the same, but this is obsolescent. So as long as those signals are still in use, you can encounter it, but they won't be replaced like this. And from my own knowledge riding the trains, you don't have a lot of those signals anymore, because driver-only operations, it does not actually make a lot of sense to use those signals. So the person in charge of the railway operations, the Eisenbahnbetriebsleiter, can say the train that gets this signal is allowed to go if the group access signal shows clear, or HP2, whatever, a signal that allows to go. And then obviously the dispatcher or the persons who can give this order of departure have to make sure that they don't give it to both trains. So this is not completely safe, and needs to be coordinated properly. So this can be a method of dealing it. Then we have this signal somewhere, and we have this in the game as well. Funny enough, halfway down the platform you can find this signal. It is called a Fahrtanzeiger. You find it at this space in the Richtlinie 301 at this place. It is not really a signal, but it is an Anzeige. It is a marker only, and it tells you, if you read the directive, it informs the driver that the Fahrdienstleiter has consented to the departure of the train. I'm not quite sure yet if that is a different indication than this order of departure. If there are two different persons, if this marker is lit as soon as the order of departure is given, or whatever. So to sort that out, we need to know what the Eisenbahnbetriebsleiter ordered for those group exit signals. In the game, you can find this marker lit on our track. Not so on the other track. It will be dark on the other track. So I guess in the game, if we see this Fahrtanzeige together with a proceed aspect on the group exit signal, we can actually rely that we are the train that can go, even if there is a second train on the other track. Typically there won't be, or the track will be occupied by a train that is going in the opposite direction anyway. But interesting, don't you think? So thank you, Open-Minded, for pointing this out for me. Yeah. Another thing, on our signals in the game, you find this installation in the middle of the mast, halfway down or halfway up. 3 white lamps in a triangular fashion that are, I have not seen them lit so far. Does this have to do anything with the fact that this is a group exit signal? No. This is set as one replacement signal, a Ersatzsignal. If those lamps are lit on a signal that shows HP0, stop, or a signal that is broken for some reason, like the signal blade hanging down or missing, or standing in a orientation that is no signal aspect at all, then you can light those 3 lamps, and then the driver is allowed to pass this signal without a written order. With caution, but without a written order. On a modern signal, you would have it like this. Not 3 lamps lit, but 1 white lamp flashing on a black signal. We have talked about this on another Swiss stream. I think, CD Radar, you said that it is the same in the Czech Republic. If a main signal is dark, you can't just pass it and think, well, it is not showing anything, but you have to consider it as a red signal. You always have to assume that a dark signal or a distorted signal shows the worst aspect that it is able to show, the most unfavorable aspect. And so on a completely dark main signal, you would have to treat it as an HP0, as a red signal, and stop. And if this white light is flashing on the signal, on a modern days signal, then you know, okay, I don't have to stop, I can just pass it and ignore it at this point. Yes, dark or some nonsense signal means stop. Nonsense signal, exactly. And with this Ersatzsignal, we can allow this signal to be passed even without a written order. Yeah. If those 3 lamps here on this signal are actually flashing, then it is a different signal, then you can pass it anyway, but you will be diverted on the track that is usually for the other direction. But I have not seen it in the game, so I won't talk about this. That's it with my presentation for today. I hope there was not too much crap in it that I said, but I trust, Ronnie, that you would have corrected me if it had been unbearable. Or maybe he left the stream because it was unbearable. Anyway, now we look at the game and what is now all good, he says. Next week we will talk about switch indicators. Now we're running in the station area. And let's see what we get there. On the right there is the track 2. We are on track 1. And this is a situation where there is a group exit signal. We can't see it yet, but what we can see is here. The Fahrtanzeiger, it is lit for us and it is not lit for the other direction. And here is the one. Maybe I should brake a bit. To actually stop at the stop marker. I did not really do it, but almost. And you can see the one signal that we have is behind the switch. So we have only one exit signal for both tracks. We would not know which of them is actually supposed to go. I ran the stop marker, unfortunately. Here you can see this Grenzzeichen thingy, the RA12 signal. That tells us up to here it is safe to stop your train so that the other train can still go across the switch. Here is the replacement signal, the ZS1 signal. If it was lit, we were allowed to pass even a red signal, but the signal is showing HP1, so no problem. But you can see the problem. If there was a second train sitting here, and we're just looking at this HP1 signal, it would not be clear for us which of the two trains is actually allowed to pass it. And for that, in the game, I take it that the Fahrtanzeiger here, that is lit for us and not lit for the other train or other side, allows us to pass the signal and not a hypothetical train on the other track. Oh, I did not really release my brakes. From what I've seen in real life, again, standing on platforms waiting for trains, as if there still are those Fahrtanzeiger signals installed, they seem to be constantly lit. What seems to be a thing for driver-only operation. I remember when I was a kid and going on a train, there was always this guy, this conductor type guy, jumping out of the doors, and as soon as the train was supposed to leave, he would hold up his pedal, showing this white disc with the green border, blowing the whistle, and then jumping in, closing the last door. He would have this weird key to close all the other doors. Are we out of it already? Yeah, we are out of it. But this is the past. There are no guys of that kind on the train, except for the ICEs. They have them still. So maybe let's focus a bit on the level crossing signals that we get. To repeat what we have seen in the presentation. We're closing in on Windecken. I think Windecken is the station where you stop shortly after getting the VR2 distance signal, typically. Zugbegleitpersonal is great. I get it that. Yeah, I think that is really great to have someone on the train. Okay, whistle board. We are getting distance signal announcement boards. It's any 3, I guess. So there was only one whistle board, so this is only a pedestrian crossing or a non-public crossing, obviously. Now we're getting a VR2 signal on this distance signal here. And then this is always tricky because there is the platform just behind that signal. So you're just focusing on the signal and then, oh, I have to stop here. Apart from that, this is a very nicely modeled part of the DLC. Getting a bit short. But for some reason we're not stopping at the stop marker here. The NE5, the stop marker, is put here on this sign that tells people not to run on the tracks. Lovewood was considered a platform in the old days. Yeah, literally just some hard dirt. That's true. Did I close my doors? Yes, I did. In the Czech Republic there is some conductor on every train. Only on some really small local train there is not, and drivers can sell tickets. The driver sells the tickets even if there is a conductor. That is weird. So, don't accelerate beyond the 40. We are still in the restricted 1000 Hertz because we got the VR2 signal. The yellow lamp is still on, so we cannot even release. But does not make sense to release anyway because we're getting the HP2 signal on the next main. And we are getting a VR0 signal that tells us to expect a stop signal on the next main. What is okay because we have to stop in Heldenbergen-Windecken anyway. So this will not hurt us. HP0 is at the end of the platform. We have some Fahrtanzeige here too, but for some reason they are facing in the wrong direction. You can see it for our train. This would not be okay. For the other train on this track, you could show the Fahrtanzeiger, but we know it that if you're coming from the opposite direction, you are sitting on this track here. But we don't have group exit signals here, but every track has its own exit signal. So just as well. Signal switched to HP2. We are allowed to leave. If I was able to release my brakes at least. Can't go faster than 40 because of the signal. And our delay successfully delayed the other train. Yeah, well, you can't expect us to perform emergency brake experiments and be still on time. Now we could release from the starting program, but it does not make sense because we are still restricted to 40. I'm not quite sure if this is a track limit restricting us to 40 here, or if the ensuing Weichenbereich is still considered to not have ended here. If you look at the pause screen, the 40 reduction does not end before we pass the next main signal for the opposite direction. Did I miss some signals announcing this level crossing, or is there just none? Maybe this is a level crossing that is secured remotely so that we don't have to take care of it. That was the end of shunt marker for this area here. I think we will do a stream on the Niddertalbahn. Yeah, you're right, it's not the starting program. It was because we passed the VR 0 and dropped into the restrictive mode because we stopped. Thank you for the correction. The starting program would not have the yellow lamp on, and we could release from the starting program just right away. But both starting program or the restrictive 1000 Hz monitoring both restricted us to 40. I think that is true at least. If you're interested and not a train driver yourself, we have a video about the restrictive monitoring that is dedicated to the restricted monitoring in PZB. 2 whistle boards, not secured level crossing. That worked as expected. But did you notice we did not get the 500 Hz at the station here? You're German, right? I'm always up to talking train stuff if you get any unclear questions. Yes, I'm German. Thank you very much. I will totally come back to this and ask you all the stuff that I don't understand. Yeah, that I don't understand. If I remember correctly, we are going into a part of the track that is descending a bit. Only one whistle board. That must only be a pedestrian crossing here. Yeah, I can see it's only a dirt road. No 500 hertz on the entire route. Yeah, I think you're right. Isolated distance signal board NE2. Acknowledge it. Get 1000 hertz. BU1 can acknowledge it. I don't know if the operating rules say that you have to acknowledge a BU1 signal, even if there is no active magnet. Probably not. Here is the level crossing that was protected by it. Main signal showing HP1. We don't have to slow down. The 60 are okay for the PZBO. I will totally come back to that. Your in-game name is the same as the Twitch name, and I can reach you via Discord. Thank you very much for the offer. I will most probably come back to that. Did you hear that, AJ? You're lucky. I don't have to... Ah, Instagram is that. Instagram them. I'm not on Instagram, so I will probably come back to you on Discord. That was a stop. The way I imagined them to be all the time. Oh, did I close my doors again? Yeah, and I know two real-world train drivers now. One from Germany and one from the Czech Republic. And when he has one. Again, not the starting program, even if the yellow lamp is not on. But the restricted PZB monitoring, because we stopped after getting the 1000 Hz at the isolated board. Since the exit signal is showing an HP1, what is more than, no, at least a Fahrtbegriff of 30, and we don't have to expect a new 1000 Hz. We are actually, or 500 Hz, we are actually really allowed to release. So that we don't get stopped by the PZB when we get faster than 45. Prague Metro. He drives for Prague Metro. Isn't that cool? Did you hear that? The sound got distorted because we got a little stutter. Höchst. That name of this station is funny in itself. Höchst. Nidder. Höchst is German for the highest. And Nidder sounds like Nieder, what would be low. Oh. And while I'm pondering about this name, the good old days of the Bundesbahn. Okay, this stop is not of the kind that I imagine it. Funny thing is that in Prague Metro there is a safety system called LZA. And what does it do, the LZA system? Oh, AJ, I see it coming. This is a long stream. We're already at 1 hour and 50 minutes. But you have to be patient with me. Two real-life train drivers on my stream. I have to enjoy that. And we only have to drive this train home to Stockheim. It is Stockheim, right? Yeah, it is Stockheim. Better patient and correct than rushed and utterly wrong. Yeah, I totally agree. Whistleboard. Second whistleboard. Level crossing. Isolated distance signal board. 1000 Hertz. Next main is around the bend. We will have to look out and see whether we have to slow down to 40 or not. And I think we don't have to. Can we see the blades properly? First the BU1 signal. Second blade is aligned with the mast, so we don't have to slow down. We can just keep our speed at 60 while driving into Altenstadt. Here in Altenstadt we actually had a train on the other track, but going into the same direction. And you can already see here every track has its own exit signal, not a group exit signal situation. And here you can see a stop marker of the inverted kind, white H. Another delayed train, yeah. You could see the signal switching from HP0 to HP1, clearing us. We can accelerate to 60, but don't forget that we got the 1000 Hertz at the isolated NE2 sign. 70 and 85 indicators were still flashing alternatingly. We were restricted to 40, now it's stopped, we don't have to release. I set off with the doors open! Oh my god, good thing they closed by themselves. You don't have acknowledged the BU1 signals. Also just a heads up when going past those NE2 boards, you're expecting an HP 0 always. Hence why I would brake a bit going past that corner. Well, you're right, I accept that. Always assume the worst. If you want to stay on the timetable in the game, you can't afford that. But obviously you're true. You're right. If you're getting the isolated NE2 boards, yeah, but yeah, they are replacing the distance signal, so you have to treat them as if they were connected with a VR0 distance signal, ordering you to expect a stop signal at the next main. Yeah. True thing. And we don't need to acknowledge the BU1 signals. Good to know that. But it is true that you have to acknowledge all distance signal repeaters that show a restricting distance signal aspect, like a VRO or a flashing KS1 in the KS signaling system, right? Even though there are typically no magnets on the distance signal repeaters. Yeah. And we will do some tree climbing in Lindheim. And from what I've read in the directives, distance signal repeaters can have magnets, but they typically do not. Oh. I stopped short a bit, but that is okay. I wanted to climb trees. So what would I do if I left my train? Obviously, the throttle is in 0. I would probably put the reverser to off if I leave it. Apply the Feststellbremse. Take the reverser handle with me. Is that enough, or do I need to do more to secure the train? Just VB and Federspeicher. Federspeicher I did. I should have closed my door. Can I not close the door on this model here? I cannot close it from the outside. Well then good thing I locked my driver's cabin. Yeah, and we can sit on the branch and look down and into the field. Nice. Oh, are you stealing my train? No. Bloop. That's actually man, nice. What is that? Did I lose my control over my train? Maybe because I... Well, I'm good to go at any rate. Is everything still okay? Reverse, race and forward. Release the brakes. Well, it does not work. I got the traction lock. Let's see if we can get this baby running again. That is what happens if you leave your train to climb trees. All of a sudden, switch on the power of the hydraulic drive. Brakes should be released. There are 0 bars in the brake cylinders. I know it works. Sometimes just switching off stuff and switching it on again. Here you can see a situation where you have the announcement board and the indicator board for the level crossing at the same post. Now we're actually in a starting program. Since we moved the reverser to neutral and then to forward again. The analog clock, here. That's really nice to have that on your dashboard. So Glauberg I think is the second but last stop, and the next one will be Stockheim. Sometimes the train brake fails to go beyond the off position when I switch it with the keyboard. Then the 1 bar stays in the brake cylinders and slows you down. Yeah, you see the Tür offen light. Should it indicate open doors? I think it should. Here, that one. Türen offen. I think this one should light up if the doors are open, but it doesn't. One thing I could not figure out, Ronnie, if you're still listening. On some trains, especially with an, what is it, an MFA 7 display, you have a yellow T indicator for the doors and a blue T indicator for the doors. Can you tell me what the difference of those two T indicators is? Maybe on the 612. I think on the old version of the ICE3 that is in the game on the Schnellfahrstrecke Köln-Aachen. There it is as well, but it is an MFA 20 there. So I'm not entirely sure. But on some cabs... Oh, now I'm really late on the brakes. Some trams, I think, even have 3 door indicators, all with the letter T. One on yellow ground, one on blue ground, and the one with the white ground with the green circle around it. Lock the doors. The 406 only has 1 yellow T. Okay. Maybe we can have a look at some trains and try to figure out. And what does the yellow T indicator tell you? That the doors are open? That the doors are malfunctioning? That was the old version of the VR2 for signal. To be honest, I only got trains that have one. That is good. But maybe I can find at least a train that has that. T not blinking but being off means closed, blinking means in sequence to close, and on means open. Ah, great. The yellow one. So where did I see the 2 T indicators? This little creek on the right looks really great with the shrubs at the banks. I think the switch indicator was not correct, but we will talk about this next time. It was the special WN2 sign for Außenbogenweichen that you should only see if you're coming from the other direction. This is also a thing that is different on our metro trains. The door controls light is lit if all doors are closed. Ah, I see. Makes sense from a failsafe point of view to light the indicator if doors are closed. Okay, we've managed to get to Stockheim, even with some emergency brake experiments. And talking off topic a lot. Thank you for watching this stream and bearing with me through again many words about this Langsamfahrstelle at Gronau. level crossing signals and the group exit signals. I hope it was not too confusing or too boring. I enjoyed it very much talking with two real-world train drivers about this stuff, and I will take this opportunity to just dip into a train where I think I have seen two T indicators. If you happen to be interested, here's a link to some Czech railway regulations. It's only in Czech, unfortunately, but there are at least pictures of some signals just to look at. Oh, I totally will follow this link and download it. Session is invalid. Well, that is not the problem. Maybe choose a route. Let's see if I remember correctly with the ICE on the Schnellfahrstrecke Köln timetable. Original release. Where is it? The 4 or 6? Just whatever train. Had my fair amount of fun. Well, that is nice to hear. And I will, well, maybe I can. Well, but Czech is not an easy language to learn. I once tried to learn some Polish when I went to Poland, and it almost broke my head. But people told me, the people in Poland told me that if you know Polish, then no, there is only the one T. That is not the train that I was talking about. So one more try. If I don't find it, then I will not do it on the stream anymore. Maybe it was the 182 where I saw that weird thing for that overseek note. 182, the old one from the rapid transit. Because this one should not have any door indicators at all. For the most up-to-date version, you need to visit the website of the organization managing the railways, but it is only in Czech. Maybe I will just I will try to find my way around this Czech website, CD Radar. Yeah, here. Can you see? There is a T indicator on yellow and a T indicator on blue. And I think there is also the T indicator with the ZP9 signal around it. Any idea why there are so many T indicators? It is an MFA20 display, right? With the round indicators. So that would be interesting. Let's wait for Ronnie's answer. Oh, that's a good one. No idea. Not good. Okay, great. Maybe you can find out and tell me sometime. That's the question for the week. Why does this locomotive, that is not even a passenger locomotive, but it is fitted out for passenger service. It actually comes from the DOS2 trains in the Rapid Transit DLC. Why does it have 3 door indicators? Nobody knows. Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed the stream very much. AJ, thank you very much for moderating the stream. Thank you, CD Radar, for your input. Thank you for your input, Ronnie. And, well, I hope it was for you as fun as it was for me. And have a good time. Take care. And see you next week, hopefully.